Build shows on the road today. We're on a ranch property outside of Austin, Texas. We're going to be looking at some off-grid projects, cabins. I'm not exactly sure what. And I've got my friends, the engineers at Positive Energy, joining me on this video. The purpose of this video is going to show you some cool architecture and some cool off-grid tech. But what I really want to know from this property and this project is how long till this is viable for you and I to do on a regular basis? Like where I'd get a client who'd say, hey, I've got a suburban, Austin, Chicago, Atlanta project. I'm not sure I necessarily want to plug into the grid, or maybe I want to be able to unplug in a couple years. Here's how we could set that up with solar, battery, rainwater collection, whatever. So with that being said, let's go see what we got. Today's build show, Shield Ranch. Let's get going. All right, guys, we made it to Shield Ranch. I got the CEO right here, Blake. Super excited to be here. Give us the overall. What are we looking at besides this super cool cabin we're about to see? What is this property and this project?
Yeah, so you're at the campsite at Shield Ranch. It's a permanent facility for our program El Ranchito, which has been around. It was developed in 2007, really for children and youth from low-income families to come out and get a nature immersion experience.
And prior to this super cool building here, this was really just a tent site in the past, right?
It was all, we had no facilities for the past, 16 years. It's all been bring the tents in, set them up, bring trailers in with the kitchen in it, and set up some shelters.
Old school Texas campsite.
Yeah, right. So
now we've got a little upscale here. This is a little nicer, even though it's in some respects pretty basic. But we're off grid, right, Blake? We're not tied to Austin Energy here, or
all off grid. That's
somebody else. And I understand that all these cabins that are spaced out really don't have air conditioning, but they do have power run to them.
That's correct. So this is again really meant to be nature immersive. So we didn't want any conditioned spaces. Mm-hmm. It's really just kind of some more permanent structures that are these screen structures that would hold up to our summertime thunderstorms basically.
Gotcha.
And give some nice facilities for the campers.
So let's go tour this, and stay tuned. In a few minutes we're going to go see like a 60 kW solar array, some battery backup, some propane generation. This is a full off-grid ranch site, campsite, but I think this architecture is gorgeous, Blake. Will you give us a tour?
Yeah, we call these sleeping shelters. Come on in, they're all named. This one happens to be one of our accessible, ADA accessible. So we're walking into a little foyer area, and this was really the brainchild of Arthur Anderson with Anderson Wise as our architect. But we were worried about, opening the door, kids coming and going, and campers coming and going, and the bugs coming in, right? Summertime, you got mosquitoes. So he said, let's create what's called a buxtobule.
Kind of a foyer for bugs.
Yeah. So it's basically this screen door here. You come in, and then you can close the sleeping areas off. So it was really an idea to keep, and it's a place, the kids can throw their muddy boots or whatever.
I love that there's only two materials. There's either galvanized steel, which looks like the whole structure is galvanized tube steel, and then all the infill is, looks seemingly unfinished cedar. Is that right?
It's Western red cedar.
It's Western red. There you go. I mean, it should last a long time.
For sure. Some
good craftsmanship on display too. We got some nice mitered corners. Yeah. And let's go. How about we look at this bedroom first? Give me what's going on here. I mean, there's no AC.
That's right. So this was really designed for our younger campers, so 4th grade through 9th grade, and we need to have counselors, 2D counselors. So this little small room really is for the counselors.
Gotcha.
And then the campers can sleep in here.
So we've got movable screens that, you got this big screen panel so that air can flow through here and cool these guys down at night. If it's cold, I'm guessing you maybe flip this for a little wind reduction.
If it's windy, you want a little more privacy, just close the panel.
And then I think you mentioned earlier, we've got DC power with just a little floor light out here, no lighting in here.
That's right.
But this fan has an inverter somewhere to give it power for this AC
Absolutely.
fan?
So it's DC power coming here from the pavilion, which is where our solar grid
we'll go next.
is. And and then it gets converted back to AC.
Got it. So just a little small. I think Charlie was telling me this is like a 350 watt inverter. So DC power in, invert to this. That's all you really need.
Yep.
Campers will use flashlights at night. Absolutely beautiful. How about we go check out the pavilion?
Sounds good.
All right, we'll see you there. All right, Blake. What's the poop situation over here?
Well, here's one of our 4 outhouses, and these are actually evaporative toilets.
Evaporative toilets.
Not to be confused with composting.
Okay, I've seen composting before. I don't know what evaporative means.
Yeah.
Will you give me a tour?
You bet. Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got a standard looking toilet here.
Yeah.
And as you look down the toilet, we can actually see the bottom as if it was a standard outhouse. But there's probably some other stuff that we can't see from here, is there?
And what you're not seeing is, like in a national park or state park where they have what's called a clevis multrum, which is it's a big vault, big concrete vault.
Yep.
That's a composting toilet, right?
Yeah.
And so that waste down there is organic. It's it's being broken down by bacteria, right? So this one actually works off of solar.
Okay. Yeah, but this kind of looks the same as those Clevis toilets that I've seen, but this is different, huh?
It's different. So instead of working off of that
composting action,
that bacterial action, composting action, it's actually, this heats up with the sun.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There's also, when the wind, you don't have to have much of a breeze, but that turbine up there is turning, and you've got these vents on the side, and so air is circulating through this.
Okay.
And so it's evaporating any of the liquid materials, and then the solid material is on a kind of a grate in here.
Huh. It's like a poop dehydrator.
And it just is, it turns to ash.
Wild.
And then that can be cleaned out maybe once or twice a year, or how much, it depends on the use.
Have these been cleaned before?
No.
How many years have these been in service?
Well, we just went into action here. So
okay.
we just opened back in October.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's just had a couple weeks of use.
Yeah,
at this point.
few months. Yeah.
That's wild. Yeah. And then you just take this rake and rake it back, and you can clean out the dehydrated.
And
material.
the ash can just go into a bag and go into the landfill.
Wow, that's wild. Yeah. How crazy. That's really neat.
But this prevents having to do a big vault. You don't have to have a truck come in here and
leach
pump it out.
field.
Yep, that's right. They're all kind of self-sustained.
So from the ranch's perspective, though, I would suspect this is nice because it's a really light footprint on the land.
That's right.
You don't need this giant field behind you to be nothing but grass.
Yeah. Because we're under conservation easement, one of the things is we can't do a lot of excavating, right, and big pits. So we wanted to be really light on the land. These, are not very deep.
Yep.
We also didn't really have a way to get, a pump truck in, right, to these outhouses because we wanted all these tucked up here in the woods.
In the woods.
Yeah, so this was the solution.
And you guys have a big, famous aquifer underneath us as well. We're going to talk about water in a minute, but give us a little preview. Like, are you off-grid on water as well?
We are. We're all rainwater collection, totally off-grid.
Neat. We got a lot more to see. Let's keep going, guys. Blake, we got some giant tanks here in an absolutely beautiful building. What's going on here?
So this is what we call our pavilion. So this is an open air pavilion. I think we were upstairs earlier. You got to see some of that.
Yep.
These 2 tanks, these are 30,000 gallon raw water tanks. So we're collecting rainwater on the roof. It conveys down here, collects in the raw water tanks, and then from here, it goes over to the treatment.
So cool. A couple things I want to break down. First off, when we walked in, I saw this giant glass and solar looking array. How much solar is here? Is it all that glass panel? How much are we looking at?
Yeah, so there's 198 60 cell solar panels that are on the roof of this pavilion, as well as over on the shower building.
So it's like 60 kW or something like that? Is that what I heard?
Yeah, 64 I believe. Yeah.
That is a lot.
Yeah.
And then when you come into that main space, that's your dining hall, your commercial kitchen, some really cool operable screens. Like a Rube Goldberg looking door that our friends at Drop House built that I got to operate. And then down here is collection, but you've got to treat some of this water. This is not just straight out of the tank to the faucet, right?
Absolutely. So this is a public water supply system because of the number of people that we serve. So it has to be permitted with TCEQ,
Got it.
Texas Commission on Environmental Quality.
Now, I know you guys worked with our friends at Positive Energy, and I actually have Christoph and Charlie here, the two smart engineers that figured out how much and what. Let's go see if we can find those guys. All right, guys. Charlie from Positive Energy. Charlie, you guys did an amazing job out here. There is a lot of complicated systems. What's happening in this water room?
There's a lot happening in here.
As we're hearing pumps in the
As we're hearing-
background.
I don't know exactly what that noise is, but I'm interested to find out. So, as Blake was walking you through, this is a TCEQ public water system, which has a lot of additional requirements above and beyond what you would see at a residential, on-site water system.
Okay.
So there's the raw water storage tanks. The water is pumped out of there through these two pumps right here, through a line of sediment filters, starting at 100 micron, going down to 5. This is a TCEQ required log 4 pathogen reduction filter, which means it's just a really tight filter. Doesn't let cysts and other large microbes through.
Okay.
And then this here is the chlorination feed unit. So this is required to be chlorinated by TCEQ. In a residential rainwater system, it'd be similar. You have sediment filtration, maybe a carbon filter, and then typically we do UV treatment.
Gotcha.
But TCEQ, with it being a public water system, they require a chlorine residual in the water, meaning that you can test chlorine and it's present.
Let me ask you one quick question, because this is a national, maybe international audience watching this. TCEQ is our local governing board.
State of Texas, yes. Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. They are the ones that permit and regulate public water systems. So this system falls under all the same categorization and requirements as Austin Water Utility, or
So this is well beyond what we would do for a standard, let's say, well water for a residence. They're in effect treating you like you're a utility,
Absolutely.
Providing service to the 500 houses in your village or whatever.
Exactly, yeah. So small subdivisions have their own municipal utility districts. They fall under TCEQ regulation. They're typically well water, which has much lower requirements. Since this is the first TCEQ permitted rainwater public water system that is for conveyance, meaning consumed on site through fixtures, it is a pilot program and requires a lot of additional testing and verification. So that's what some of this is up here. There's 2 turbidity monitors.
Oh, interesting.
And these sample and measure the turbidity, which is a measure of cloudiness in the water. And these systems, when they run, they produce a lot of wastewater. And so this being a rainwater system, you don't want to waste it.
You don't want to just dump that in the grass.
Yeah, absolutely. So this was a modification to capture that measurement water and put it back in the raw water system.
Super smart.
So that way, if the turbidity level is above regulation, it goes back into the untreated side, not into the treated side, and then gets retreated again to be consumed.
That's wild. And so those giant tanks outside are holding, for layman's terms, the raw rainwater. You're treating all that in here, turning it into municipal water, in effect. And then this tank, the kind of smallish tank, then is where you draw from to feed the rest of the camp.
Yeah, absolutely. So those are that tank out there is sized for a design day, and the water is pumped out of that through these pumps right here, and then distributed to this series of pipes right here throughout the building. There's also some metering and other things going on as well. These are pressure tanks, help maintain pressure throughout the system. This is hot and cold distribution. The hot water goes throughout the pavilion, does not go out to the periphery, doesn't go out to like the outhouses.
Got it. And then you've got a hot water maker right over here. Is that just an electric resistance tank, or what are we looking at?
No, so since this is an off-grid building, we wanted to be as efficient as possible in our water heating. We also wanted it to be electric. And there is a shower building up the hill. So there's really high peak demand of hot water at certain times of day. And so we had to size a very large storage tank, but overall the consumption's not gigantic. So we have two Sandin or Sandco Eco.
Sand CO2.
Sandco, Sand
They changed their
CO2.
name. I have the same one in my house, by the way.
Yeah, that.
It's been awesome.
It's a highly efficient CO2 supercritical heat pump.
So it's using CO2 as the refrigerant, basically, which is kind of cool instead of the standard refrigerants. But what I found in my house is it's really efficient, and even with my family of 6, I've yet to run out of hot water with my stainless steel, I forget what it is, 80-gallon tank.
80-gallon tank. I believe this one is 300 gallons.
Okay, so you got a lot more.
For.
That's wild.
So we got 300 gallons of hot water to be able to meet that showering load.
Check out those PEX fittings too. That's the biggest Uponor PEX fitting I've ever seen in my whole life. That is giant. Now this project size though is probably not unlike some of the larger projects you guys do. And we've talked water now. How about we transition and talk solar? Because you were the lead engineer on the solar design too, right?
We master planned the energy systems.
Okay.
We did not engineer the solar specifically. That was left to be design build by the solar installer.
Got
But
it.
in terms of the overall system architecture and how it's integrated together, that was a positive energy design.
Gotcha. Let's go check the next building out and you can give me the 411 on that.
Sounds great.
We'll see you over there. Charlie, you've basically designed a small town's worth of power generation. What is this giant box we're looking at here?
So this is a big self-contained battery unit. It is from a company called Current Energy Storage now, formerly Switch Energy Storage. It has about 200 kilowatt hours of storage, about 100 kilowatts of peak power capacity. There's 3 racks of batteries in it.
Holy cow.
They are all, this is I believe an 800 volt system. So definitely do not touch anything. It will kill you if you short anything out. It might kill all of us.
I will not touch anything. So like compared to like a Tesla Powerwall, these little packs, you know, this might be 2 packs would equate to a Tesla Powerwall or some. I don't know. I know.
I'll
we
have
don't
to
know
run
the
some
exact
math on that. Yeah,
math,
we can run some math and
But
put
this
the
would be
numbers
like a
in
whole
post.
wall full of
Well,
Tesla
to give
Powerwalls.
you an idea, a Powerwall is 13.5 kilowatt hours of 5.5, running it, power output.
Okay.
5.5 kilowatts running power output. And so, and you can stack theoretically up to 10 of them. So you can get 135 kilowatt hours, about 50 kilowatts worth of power out of a totally maxed out Powerwall system. The main difference is that the Tesla Powerwall architecture is limited to a 200 amp gateway.
Got it.
So it can only supply power into a 200 amp, system. Whereas this is connected into a 400 amp panel.
And this is 200 kilowatt hours?
200, roughly 200 kilowatt hours, 205.
Holy cow,
So
that's why it's so big.
that's why it's big. The other thing is this is a commercial grade system. It has its own, it is 95, UL 9540A certified, which is a fire protection certification, which allows it to be so dense. That's what this enclosure grants it. Has built into it heating and cooling as well, so that it keeps the battery cells happy. So on the back side over there, you can see
the other side on there.
on the back side is where the heating and cooling system is for this battery unit.
Got it.
And so that keeps this, all the batteries operating in their proper thermal envelope. Lithium batteries do not like to discharge when it's cold, and they cannot recharge when it's below freezing. So this system has to keep them above that. Same thing when it gets too hot. You don't want, overheating of the battery system, so it has a built-in air conditioner, basically, to keep it all cool.
And this camp, when it's operating at full capacity, I think I heard something like, roughly 100 campers, let's say, are here on a July camp session. In July, when those solar panels are really probably producing at a pretty maximum amount, is the power from the camp just coming direct from the solar cells, or does the power go to the battery first and always pulls from the battery to the grid? So
that's a great question. So I believe those SMAs are not grid forming inverters, meaning that the grid formation, the way that the power of this microgrid is maintained is through the inverters in the battery system.
Okay. Gotcha.
Some solar systems do have grid forming inverters or micro inverters, and so they can provide that signal and operate, and provide power to a load without like the battery inverter being up and operational.
Yeah.
I believe this system is through the battery inverter.
I got a lot to learn on this. There is so much.
There's a lot of nuance here.
You guys did some incredible work.
This-
and I would say you guys have also done, like I'm doing a big ranch project right now that you guys did all the infrastructure for. We've got solar. We've got a generator going on. We don't have a big battery storage system on that particular project.
Not yet.
But we're going to talk to your boss in a minute, Christoph, the founder of Positive Energy. I'm really curious, like, this is obviously a bigger scale than most people watching this are going to do. But what lessons, from your perspective, that you learned on this project could be applied to smaller projects, individual projects, condominiums, whatever? Is there anything off the top of your head that you're like, we learned a couple things here?
Yeah, so this was an off-grid system by choice, part of the kind of motivating ethos of the camp, to be close to nature and not disrupt it. The closest power line is at Crumley Ranch Road, which is a ways into the from here.
Yeah.
So it would be blazing a huge trail to put a power line in across the property.
Mm-hmm.
So all of that disruption to the environment, that they didn't want that. So they
Yep.
wanted to see sort of what they could do. They also want to be as sustainable as possible from a power and operational standpoint. So that was part of the motivating factor for the microgrid. It is a large system. This is a commercial enclosure battery system, to be sure. But a 400 amp main breaker service, that's equivalent to a lot of the larger houses that we work on. So
Yeah,
it's
for
not
sure.
way out of the scale of some larger homes. This is what it takes, though, to be fully off-grid. We have a 200 kilowatt-hour battery system, a 60 kilowatt solar array, and we have a 60 kilowatt backup generator.
So that's the part that I don't totally understand. Like, you wouldn't think, if I've got this giant battery here, like, why do I need that big Kohler propane generator? Like, what drove the need for that as well?
Yeah, it's a question of trade-offs, and ultimately, where do you draw the line, and how reliant you are on solar and battery alone? Ideally, it would be 100%.
Mm-hmm.
To reach 100% reliability on solar and battery alone would have quadrupled the size of the solar array.
Holy cow.
And potentially increase the size of the battery by
Double or more.
Double, perhaps. Yeah, I can't remember exactly what we ran an optimization.
So even with 60 kW of solar, you're not necessarily producing enough. Is that because some days are sunnier and some days like today are cloudier? Is that what's going on there?
Yeah, and we experienced this in November. We had a very cloudy November here in Austin. And we had stretches of a week or more, multiple times, where it was overcast the entire day. And so the solar production out of the array was down to 10% of its rated capacity.
Wow.
And so when you have...
even though it's 60 kW, you're getting 6 put into the batteries, which meant when midnight comes and we're still trying to run refrigerators and ACs or whatever, there wasn't enough battery potentially. If that happened over multiple days.
You can ride on the battery for some amount of time. You don't have to discharge the battery. Like, this battery is larger than a single day's use of energy.
Sure.
But if the array is producing less than a single day's use of energy, your battery level is going to decline over time.
Right,
and
you're
after
seeing
multiple days, it starts to just get down lower and lower.
Yeah.
And so that's where the generator provides that backstop to the system.
Got it.
And yeah, we would love to be able to design completely without generators, just from, like a operational carbon standpoint.
Sure.
But from an embodied carbon standpoint, putting in all of the infrastructure to be 100% solar and batteries, there is a real, trade-off and discussion there.
We were talking earlier, and you said something really profound I want to come back to, which is, when you have your own grid like this, you're totally off everyone's network. It's not like I can pick up the phone and call Aston Energy and say, hey guys, a tree branch hit the main line, roll your truck out to me. Will you talk about that for a second?
Yeah, absolutely. We get asked about this all the time, where people come to us, they make the comment of like, I want to go off grid. I don't want to be connected to the utility. I want to be my own utility. And they are thinking about it from like, they're used to hassling with the utility about bills or maybe a power outage here or there, but they don't really factor in that when there is a power outage, the utility is sending someone right away to fix that outage.
Yeah.
When you are your own grid, it is entirely up to you to figure out how to fix it.
Yeah.
And so, if it fails in the middle of a storm, like a branch falls on your house and destroys your solar array or something like that, or you run out of fuel with your generator, or you have some sort of fault issue with one of your inverters, you got to find out what's going wrong, order the part or have somebody who you can call who will come do all those diagnostics and, repair immediately.
And is that person available at midnight when you get the problem on Christmas Eve?
The answer is almost always no, because it's a local solar installer, right? And so, they are not the utility.
They're not set up for that.
They don't have 24/7, operations trucks ready to roll.
Yeah.
And so there's a difference between resiliency and reliability, and being grid connected with the ability to island is really the most kind of robust system. You have most diversity of energy sources available to you. You have the grid, you have your own power, which could be from solar and batteries and a generator potentially. That's 3 different sources of power.
That's a lot.
The likelihood of all 3 of those failing at once, very low.
Sure.
But when it's just you and you're just on solar and batteries, then you're up to, the system might run low. And you either have to accept that it's out of power or drastically change your behavior, which there are a lot of people who live off grid who are happy to make that decision.
Sure.
And so ultimately it comes back to like what you, the owner, operator, whatever of the system are willing to tolerate. If you're willing to tolerate flexibility in how you use your energy and how you behave and operate,
Sure.
you can get by on a solar and battery system just fine. That's totally fine.
Sure.
If you have a reliability requirement to be able to operate kind of with your standard amount of operating energy consumption, that doesn't have that much variability, then you have to size the system accordingly and design it accordingly.
Yeah.
That's where the generator comes in.
Really appreciate the tour, man. You guys put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in here. What I love about this is this feels to me like it's 10 or 20 years ahead of its time, that you guys are blazing that path. And what's cool too is you're taking the knowledge of what you're learning here and you're applying it to other jobs, including mine that you guys are working on. And I know you guys work across the country on all kinds of different projects, designing HVAC systems and power systems and water systems, all kinds of things. Really appreciate your time, dude. Let's go see if we can find Christoph.
Yeah, thanks, Matt.
Guys, you've met Christoph Irwin before. Christoph, beautiful job by your team, man. What a cool project. But I'm curious from your perspective, what can we learn from this project? Is what you're seeing here going to be on my builds in 5 years or 10 years from now? Or is there things I should be doing or people watching this that are building should be doing now that would set us up for this in the future?
Okay, yeah. So I'd say there's 2 stories here with Shield Ranch. One is that solar energy and rain literally fall from the sky. And same thing is true wherever you're living. And we need to think about providing the infrastructure to avail ourselves of those flows, right? And this applies not just here.
It's free energy, basically,
right? So
right?
it used to be, I have a house, I'm connected to the energy grid and the water grid, I'm done. Right? That is no longer the case anymore. You're building a house, it's going to be there during a completely different period in the energy transition.
Mm-hmm.
And so it needs to be provided with the infrastructure to think about, how am I going to use energy that arrives freely? How am I going to use rainwater that arrives freely? And there are a lot of people. You have some clients. We have lots of clients already looking this way. But generally speaking, we're ahead, right? We're sort of like the organic food section of the building industry. We're kind of looking ahead, and it's growing fast. And the second story really was the personal story of the project team. The architect, the owners, all amazing engineers with us, and the installers, the builders. There's so many people. It took like holding on tight, buckle in to make this happen, because there were a lot of
firsts here,
twists
right?
and turns,
Yeah.
and you had to just hold on sometimes. And make it
permitting
happen.
wasn't easy, and you're telling these utility companies and these local officials, I want to do this, and they're like, we've never done that before. I don't know about that. So there's probably a lot of convincing and a lot of like, all right, guys, we got to power through this to make this happen, right?
Absolutely. You just got to hold on, feel like this is important. We're going to steady on. Because, sometimes you deal with these bureaucratic agencies, and it just makes you want to just like, oh, forget it.
Yeah.
But
We'll
we
just
didn't,
go back to plugging into the grid.
The owners were amazing here.
What's
amazing team.
if you had that crystal ball, is this kind of project, rather than being a pilot project, being like a normal project, 5, 20, 50 years out? Like, what do you think? You have any idea? I mean, you've seen solar, just a regular old solar panel go from a small amount of production to a giant amount of production. You've seen more and more owners coming to you saying, I'm really interested in, being able to unplug from the grid. How far into the future is this for us?
Yeah, it's probably already here in some ways, and it's also in the 5 to 10 year range as well. And what I'm getting at is solar prices have plummeted. Battery prices are on that curve. They're still high right now.
Mm-hmm.
But when I say it's here now, if you're building now, you want to make sure your house has the infrastructure to accommodate these technologies when you're ready. Otherwise, it's very disruptive.
Interesting. Any practical takeaway for that? Like, what does that mean? My house has the infrastructure. I just finished building, and I know I wasn't thinking about a lot of this when I was building.
Well, yeah. So it starts out with owner preferences, owner values. What do they want? What are their goals? Right? Do they want to be off grid? Do they want to have the ability just to ride through an outage? Those are very different scenarios and very different expense profiles associated with.
That's
them.
a good point.
Yeah, and I think the main thing to think about is what was the design for, right? Because these are not systems you can ad hoc later just buckle on to your existing
bolt
home.
onto the house.
So yeah, I mean, and what have I just said there? Like, oh, the electrical system for a home, including on-site power production and storage, was designed from the get-go based on owners' preferences. Well, that doesn't usually happen, right? So here we are, we're adding another layer of like looking at the design process of a home, the design process itself, like a technology that's evolving.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Man, great job. And we didn't get to see the architects today, but big shout out to Anderson Wise.
Yeah.
Not only was this really incredible from a nerdy perspective, it's really beautiful, frankly. And, the thing that I love about whenever I hear building scientists talk, like Joe Stiebrick says, the only buildings that will last are pretty buildings. That really resonates with me. No matter how nerdy and how good the project is, if it's ugly, it's probably going to get torn down, and that's not really great for anybody. So when you build beautiful buildings that also have some incredible infrastructure and technology that are really thoughtfully done, I suspect 100 years from now, my great-grandchildren may be visiting this ranch and spending a week in those cabins that we just saw that look like they're going to be around for, maybe several hundred years. Great job, guys. Really, really appreciate it. Charlie and Blake, thank you guys for the tour as well. Blake, how can people learn more about Shield Ranch if they want to send kids here, if they want to donate to your foundation, any of that kind of stuff?
Sure. Just go to shieldranch.com and click on the program page. This facility is called the campsite at Shield Ranch, and it's a program and a facility of the Shield Ranch Foundation. So there's a donate button on the website.
I bet they like that. Guys, thank you so much. I'll put links to all the people we talked about today in the description below. If you're not currently a subscriber, hit that subscribe button below. We've got new and nerdy content every Tuesday and every Friday. Follow us on TikTok or Instagram. Otherwise, we'll see you next time on The Build Show.